Hello everyone. Before you start reading my incredible story, please don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel. Your support means everything to me and helps me share more real-life stories like this one. Now, let me tell you about the day my life changed forever. At my husband's funeral, a woman I had never seen before handed me a baby and said, "He's yours now." The small bundle was warm against my chest as everyone around us gasped. My husband Kofi's casket stood just feet away, his body not yet lowered into the ground, and here I was, holding proof of his betrayal. After 22 years of marriage, after working 2 jobs to put him through medical school, after giving him 3 daughters and standing by him as he built his practice, this stranger had just handed me his secret son at his own funeral. I looked down at the sleeping child who couldn't be more than 2 months old, and saw Kofi's eyes, Kofi's nose, Kofi's betrayal staring back at me. The church went completely silent. My 3 daughters, Amara, 21, Zora, 19, and Nia, 16, stood frozen beside me, their black dresses stark against their shocked faces. My mother-in-law, who moments before had been wailing dramatically for the cameras, stopped mid-cry. My pastor, who had been praising Kofi as a faithful husband and devoted father, stood with his mouth hanging open. And there I was, Fatima Okafor, 47 years old, suddenly holding the evidence that my husband of more than 2 decades had been living a double life. "His name is Tunde," the woman said, her voice surprisingly steady. "He's 7 weeks old. Kofi was his father. I can't raise him alone. He belongs with his family." Then, before I could respond, she turned and walked out of the church, leaving me holding the child in a diaper bag as hundreds of eyes bored into me. I didn't know it then, but this moment was just the beginning. Over the next few months, I would discover that Kofi had been leading a double life far more complicated and dangerous than a simple affair. He had been stealing from his medical practice for years, had accumulated massive gambling debts, had taken out loans in my name, and had put our family in financial and physical danger. This is my story of betrayal, discovery, and ultimately justice. I first met Kofi Okafor when we were both students. I was studying accounting, and he had dreams of becoming a doctor. We fell in love quickly, marrying just after I graduated. I postponed my career plans to work 2 jobs supporting him through medical school. When he finally became Dr. Okafor, we celebrated as if the achievement was shared, because it was. I had typed his papers, quizzed him before exams, and paid our bills while he studied. When he opened his practice, I managed the books and hired the staff. I had invested everything in our partnership. We built a good life in our community. Our 3-bedroom house wasn't fancy, but it was in a safe neighborhood with good schools for our daughters. I finally got my accounting certification and worked part-time while managing Kofi's practice. We weren't rich, but we were comfortable. I thought we were happy. Kofi worked long hours, sometimes staying late at his practice or being called to the hospital for emergencies. But that was the life of a doctor. At least that's what I believed. We had our struggles like any couple, but I never suspected infidelity. Kofi attended church with us every Sunday, mentored young men in the community, and was respected by everyone. He told me I was beautiful even after 3 children and years of marriage. He remembered our anniversary. He helped the girls with their homework. On the surface, he was the perfect husband and father. How could I have known it was all a lie? The first tiny crack appeared 2 years ago. I noticed discrepancies in the practice's accounts. Small amounts at first, $200 here, $500 there. Unexplained withdrawals that Kofi dismissed as expenses when I questioned him. He would get irritated if I pressed for details, saying, "Do you think I'm stealing from my own practice?" Of course I didn't. How could I suspect the man I trusted with everything? Then there were the late-night phone calls. Kofi would step outside to take them, returning with vague explanations about patient emergencies. Once, I overheard him saying, "I'll get the money by Friday. I promise." When I asked who he was talking to, he said it was a medical equipment supplier who had expedited an order for him. My friend Esther, who worked at the bank, gave me the first real warning. We were having coffee when she carefully said, "Fatima, has Kofi taken out a new loan recently?" When I said no, her face grew troubled. "I shouldn't tell you this, but I saw him with Lionel at the bank yesterday. You know Lionel works with those payday loan people now." Lionel was known for connecting desperate people with high-interest lenders. Why would a successful doctor need such services? When I confronted Kofi, he became angry. "Are you having me followed now?" It was for a patient who needed help, and I didn't want to embarrass them by using my name. Always assuming the worst. His explanation seemed plausible, and his anger made me feel guilty for doubting him. I apologized and tried to forget about it. That was my mistake. One night, Kofi didn't come home. He didn't answer his phone. I called the hospital, his practice, our friends. No one had seen him. He finally returned at dawn, smelling of alcohol and cologne that wasn't mine. "Emergency surgery," he claimed, though his hands were steady, and his eyes were red from something other than exhaustion. I said nothing, but I felt something break inside me. I knew he was lying, but I wasn't ready to face what that might mean. Then came the call that changed everything. It was a Tuesday afternoon when the police called to tell me there had been an accident. Kofi's car had gone off the road at high speed. He was pronounced dead at the scene. They asked me to come identify his body. In a daze, I called my mother to come stay with Naya, then drove to the hospital where my husband had saved so many lives but couldn't save his own. The days that followed were a blur. Arranging the funeral, accepting condolences, holding my daughters as they cried. I functioned on autopilot, still in shock. We had been married for 22 years. Despite my suspicions, despite the cracks in our marriage, I had loved him. Now he was gone, and I would never get answers to my questions. Or so I thought until that woman walked into his funeral and handed me a baby that looked exactly like Kofi. "Mrs. Okafor?" A voice broke through my shock. It was Pastor Emmanuel touching my elbow gently. "Perhaps we should move to my office." I nodded numbly, still cradling the baby. My daughters followed in stunned silence as the pastor led us away from the staring congregation. As we walked, the baby stirred against my chest, making small mewling sounds that would soon become full-blown cries. I had no formula, no supplies except what might be in the diaper bag the woman had left. I hadn't held a baby since Nia was small. In the privacy of the pastor's office, my oldest daughter, Amara, finally spoke. "Mom, what just happened? Who was that woman? Is that really Dad's?" She couldn't finish the sentence. "I don't know," I said, though the baby's resemblance to Kofi answered at least part of her question. I gently bounced the increasingly fussy infant while looking through the diaper bag. Inside, I found formula, diapers, a change of clothes, and an envelope. "Zora, can you prepare this bottle while I check what's in here?" As Zora took the formula and went to find water, I shifted the baby to one arm and opened the envelope with my free hand. Inside was a handwritten letter and what looked like a birth certificate. "Dear Mrs. Okafor," the letter began. "My name is Grace Mensah. I met your husband 3 years ago when he treated my mother. We began an affair soon after. I didn't know he was married until I was already pregnant. When I told him about the baby, he begged me to keep it secret and promised to support us. He said he would leave you eventually, but needed time to sort things out. After Tunde was born, Kofi visited occasionally, but the payments became irregular. Last month, he told me he was in trouble and couldn't help anymore. He seemed scared. After I heard about his death, I received threatening phone calls asking about money Kofi owed. I'm afraid for my safety and Tunde's. He deserves to be with his family, with you and his sisters. I'm sorry for the pain this causes. Kofi told me you were a kind woman. Please take care of our son. The birth certificate confirmed it. Tunde Kofi Mensah, born just 7 weeks ago. Father, Kofi Okafor. Mother, Grace Mensah. I looked up to see my 3 daughters watching me, their faces reflecting confusion, anger, and grief. Nia, my youngest, was crying silently. Zora returned with the prepared bottle, her hands shaking slightly. It's true, I said simply. This is your father's son. I handed the bottle to Zora. Would you like to feed your brother? Her eyes widened in surprise at my calm tone, but she took the bottle and the baby, settling into a chair. Despite her shock, she knew what to do, having babysat for neighbors over the years. Amara grabbed the letter and read it quickly, her expression hardening. So Dad was cheating on you for years? And this woman just dumps his baby on us at his funeral? How could she? How could he? Nia corrected, her voice breaking. Dad was the one who cheated. Dad was the one who lied. I took a deep breath, trying to process everything. Girls, I don't have answers right now. But this child is innocent, and according to this letter, he might be in danger. I turned to Pastor Emmanuel, who had been standing quietly by the door. "Pastor, I need to finish my husband's funeral. Can you help us?" The pastor nodded gravely. "I'll have my wife come sit with you and the baby. We can tell the congregation there's been a family emergency, but the service will continue." "Thank you," I said. Then I turned back to my daughters. "We will get through this together. Right now, we need to say goodbye to your father. We can figure out everything else afterward." Somehow we made it through the rest of the funeral. Pastor Emmanuel's wife, a nurse named Blessing, helped with the baby. My daughters stood beside me, their faces now masks of dignity despite the whispers around us. I felt strangely calm, as if watching everything from a distance. It wasn't until we returned home, a newborn baby in tow, that the reality of my situation truly hit me. Kofi was gone. He had betrayed me in the most fundamental way. And now I had his infant son, evidence of his infidelity, to care for. But that was just the beginning of what I would discover about the man I thought I knew. After the funeral, people filled our house with food and awkward condolences. My closest friend, Vivian, organized everything, intercepting well-meaning but nosy visitors who wanted to see the baby, or worse, to question me about him. By evening, everyone had finally left except Vivian, who was washing dishes while I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the envelope Grace had left. "Have you opened the birth certificate?" Vivian asked gently. I nodded. "It's official. Kofi is listed as the father. And the threats this woman mentioned? Do you think they're real?" "I don't know," I admitted. But something was definitely wrong. Remember those discrepancies I found in the practice accounts? I think they might be connected. Vivian dried her hands and sat across from me. "Fatima, you need to check everything. Bank accounts, insurance, the practice finances, everything. If Kofi was hiding a child, what else was he hiding?" Her words sent a chill through me. She was right. I needed to investigate. But first, I had to decide what to do about Tunda. As if sensing my thoughts, Vivian asked, "Will you keep him?" I looked toward the living room, where my daughters had set up a makeshift bassinet for the baby, who was finally sleeping after a long, confusing day. "He's innocent in all this, and he's my husband's son. That makes him family, regardless of how he came into this world." Vivian reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "You always were too good for Kofi. Not many women would take in their husband's loved child." "I don't know if I'm good," I said honestly. "But I know what it's like to grow up without a father. I won't punish this child for Kofi's sins." That night, after everyone had gone to bed, I sat at Kofi's desk in our bedroom and began my investigation. I opened his laptop, something I rarely did when he was alive. It was password protected, but I tried our anniversary date and got in immediately. That small fact, that he used our wedding date as his password even while betraying me, made me laugh bitterly. The email account was mostly work-related, but there was a folder labeled personal that contained correspondence with Grace going back 3 years. I forced myself to read through their exchanges, watching their relationship unfold in painful detail. In the beginning, Kofi was charming, sending her the same kinds of messages he once sent me. As time passed, the emails became more practical. Discussions about money, about her pregnancy, about his promises to figure things out. The last emails were different. Kofi sounded desperate. "I can't get the money right now. These people are dangerous. I need more time. Don't contact me at the office anymore. I think they're watching me. Keep Tunda safe. If anything happens to me, go to Fatima. She's a good woman. She'll know what to do." My blood ran cold. Who were these people? What kind of trouble was Kofi in? I switched to checking our financial records. Our joint account showed regular withdrawals. $2,000 here, $3,500 there, over the past year, labeled as medical supplies or continuing education. I knew these were lies. Kofi's practice had a separate account for business expenses. Then I found statements for credit cards I didn't know existed, all in Kofi's name but with me listed as a secondary account holder, though I'd never seen the cards. The balances were staggering, nearly $47,000 spread across 3 cards. The purchases didn't match our lifestyle. Expensive restaurants I'd never been to, jewelry stores, hotels in our own city. Finally, I opened our safe and found documents for a second mortgage on our house that I had supposedly co-signed. My signature was there, but I had never signed it. Kofi had forged my name to borrow $75,000 against our home. By midnight, I had uncovered over $160,000 in debt that I knew nothing about. And I still didn't know who Kofi owed money to or why he had been so afraid. As I sat there surrounded by evidence of my husband's deception, the baby began to cry from the other room. I went to him, lifting his tiny body and holding him against my shoulder. "Shh, Tunda," I whispered. "We'll figure this out." Looking down at this innocent child, I made a decision. I would uncover every secret Kofi had kept. I would protect my family, all of my family, including this new son who had been thrust into my life. And I would make sure that whoever had threatened Grace would never harm her or this baby. What I didn't realize was how dangerous that decision would be, or how deep Kofi's deception went. I didn't know that within the next 24 hours, the first threatening message would arrive, or that my investigation would uncover crimes I never imagined my husband capable of committing. The morning after the funeral, I woke to the sounds of a baby crying. For a moment I was disoriented, wondering whose child was in my house. Then reality came crashing back. Kofi was dead, and his infant son was now in my care. I found Amara, already warming a bottle in the kitchen, her face set in determination despite the dark circles under her eyes. "I heard him crying," she explained. "Figured you needed sleep." "Thank you," I said, taking the prepared bottle. "How are you feeling about all this?" She shrugged, a gesture so reminiscent of Kofi that it made my heart ache. "I'm angry at Dad. But it's not the baby's fault." She hesitated, then added, "I called the university this morning. I'm taking a semester off." "Amara, no. Mom, you need help. You have 3 daughters and now a newborn. Dad left us with. Whatever mess he was in. I'm coming home." Before I could argue, my phone rang. "Unknown number," I answered cautiously. "Mrs. Okafor?" The voice was male, unfamiliar, with a hard edge. "I'm sorry for your loss. Your husband was a good man, but he left some unfinished business." My hand tightened on the phone. "Who is this?" "A business associate of Dr. Okafor's. He owed me a significant amount of money. I was very patient with him, but now that he's gone, the debt transfers to his estate. That means you." "I don't know." "Anything about any debt," I said, though the emails and financial records I'd found last night suggested otherwise. "That's unfortunate," the man said smoothly. "Because it's quite substantial. $200,000 plus interest. Dr. Okafor borrowed from me for some. Personal investments that didn't pan out." The amount shocked me. Even with everything, I'd discovered I hadn't realized the debt was so large. "I'll need that money within 30 days, he continued. "Otherwise, we'll need to discuss alternative arrangements." "Are you threatening me?" I demanded, trying to keep my voice steady. "Not at all, Mrs. Okafor. Just stating facts. 30 days. I'll be in touch." The line went dead. I stood frozen, the baby now fussing in my arms, the bottle forgotten in my hand. "Mom?" Amara was watching me with concern. "Who was that?" I couldn't bring myself to frighten her with the truth. "Just someone Kofi owed money to. Nothing to worry about." The lie felt bitter on my tongue, but I needed time to understand what was happening before involving my children. After feeding Tunde, I called Vivian. "I need help," I told her. "Can you watch the baby while I go to Kofi's practice? I need to check something." An hour later, I was sitting at my husband's desk, going through his patient files. As the practice manager, I had access to everything, or so I thought. It didn't take long to discover that there were gaps in the accounting. Payments from insurance companies for certain procedures didn't match the number of procedures performed. There was a pattern. Expensive treatments were being billed, but not all of that money was reaching the practice accounts. I called our accountant, Mr. Nkomo, who came immediately. "I've been trying to reach you, Mrs. Okafor," he said gravely. There are irregularities I've been meaning to discuss. Together, we tracked the discrepancies. Over 3 years, nearly $180,000 had disappeared from the practice. Kofi had been systematically skimming money, altering records to hide the theft. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Okafor, but I'll need to report this," Mr. Nkomo said. "Insurance fraud is a serious offense." "I understand," I said, numb with shock. "But can you give me a few days? I need to figure out what's happening. Someone is threatening me about money Kofi supposedly owed." Mr. Nkomo hesitated, then nodded. 3 days. Then I must report it. When I returned home, there was a strange car parked outside my house. My heart raced, thinking it might be the man who had called that morning. Instead, I found a woman sitting in my living room, chatting with Vivian while Tunde slept nearby. "Mrs. Okafor," the woman stood, extending her hand. "I'm Detective Sarah Mensah. No relation to Grace," she added with a slight smile. "I'm investigating your husband's accident." "Accident?" I repeated. "I thought he lost control of his car." Detective Mensah's expression grew serious. "New evidence suggests it might not have been an accident. There were no skid marks, which is unusual for a single vehicle crash, and the autopsy found defensive wounds on his hands that aren't consistent with the crash." The room seemed to tilt around me. "Are you saying someone killed Kofi?" "We're saying it's suspicious. And given what happened at the funeral yesterday, which is all over social media, by the way, I wanted to ask if you knew of anyone who might have wanted to harm your husband." I laughed bitterly. Until yesterday, I thought my husband was a faithful man who occasionally worked too much. Now I discover he had another family, stole from his own practice, and owed money to dangerous people. So no, Detective, I don't know who might have wanted to harm him. I didn't know him at all. Detective Mensah's eyes sharpened with interest. "Tell me about the money he owed. And who are these dangerous people?" I told her about the morning's phone call and about Grace's letter mentioning threats. I explained what I'd discovered about the practice finances and the debts Kofi had accumulated. "This is very helpful," the detective said, jotting notes. "Mrs. Okafor, it sounds like your husband was involved in something criminal, possibly gambling or drugs. The way the money was being skimmed suggests expertise, not something a doctor would typically know how to do. You think he was working with someone?" The thought had never occurred to me. It's likely. And that person might be the key to understanding what happened to your husband. She handed me her card. "Call me if you receive any more threats, or if you discover anything else. And Mrs. Okafor, be careful. If someone killed your husband over money, and they think you have that money now..." She didn't need to finish the sentence. The implication was clear. My family might be in danger. After the detective left, I sat down heavily on the sofa. Vivian brought me a cup of tea, her face grave. "Fatima, what are you going to do?" "I need to find out everything," I said. "Who Kofi owed money to, why he was stealing, what happened to all that money, and I need to protect my children." "Let the police handle it," Vivian urged. "This sounds dangerous." But I shook my head. The police are focused on Kofi's death. I need to focus on keeping us alive and out of debt. I looked over at the sleeping baby. All of us. That evening, I called a family meeting. My 3 daughters sat in the living room, with Zora holding Tunde. It was time for complete honesty. "Girls, there's something I need to tell you," I began. "Your father wasn't just unfaithful. He was in serious trouble." I explained about the debts, the stolen money, and the detective's suspicions about his death. "Someone murdered Dad?" Nia asked, her voice small and frightened. "We don't know that for sure," I said quickly. "But it's possible. What we do know is that there are people who think your father owed them money, and now they expect me to pay." "That's not fair," Zora protested. "You didn't borrow the money." "Unfortunately, that may not matter," I said. "Legally, as his widow, I might be responsible for some of his debts. But more importantly, these people don't seem like they care about what's legal. Amara's expression was fierce. So what do we do? First, we protect ourselves. No one goes anywhere alone. We set the security alarm every night. We don't discuss family business with anyone outside this room, not even friends. I took a deep breath. Second, I'm going to find out exactly what your father was involved in and who he owed. There's money missing, and I need to trace it. How can we help? Amara asked, with her sisters nodding in agreement. Their solidarity brought tears to my eyes. Amara, I need you to go through Dad's personal belongings, his desk, his closet, anywhere he might have hidden things. Zora, you're good with computers. I need you to check his laptop more thoroughly. Look for hidden files or emails I might have missed. Nia, you'll help with Tunde. And all of you, keep your eyes open for anything suspicious. They nodded solemnly, accepting their assignments. Looking at their determined faces, so like their father's, yet so different in their integrity, I felt a surge of strength. We would get through this together. The next morning, I received a text from a different unknown number. The clock is ticking. Mrs. Okafor, 29 days left. I forwarded it to Detective Mensah, then continued my investigation. I visited our bank and discovered that Kofi had a safe deposit box I didn't know about. As his widow, I was allowed to access it. Inside, I found $15,000 in cash, a handgun with ammunition, which I immediately turned over to the police, and a small notebook. The notebook contained what looked like gambling debts, amounts, dates, and initials like BM and LK. The most frequent initials were VC, with the largest amounts beside them. I also found a flash drive, which I took home for Zora to examine. When she plugged it into her laptop, we found photographs, dozens of them, showing Kofi with a tall, well-dressed man at what appeared to be a private gambling club. There were other photos of Kofi with Grace, some of them intimate. Why would Dad keep these? Zora asked, disturbed by the images. I don't think he did, I said slowly, studying one photo that showed Kofi handing money to the well-dressed man. I think someone was blackmailing him. That evening, Amara discovered something in the lining of Kofi's favorite suit. A business card for Vincent Coker, private investments with a phone number and an address in the affluent part of town. The name matched the VC initials from the notebook. This has to be who Dad owed money to, Amara said. Should we call Detective Mensah? I hesitated. Not yet. Let me see if I can find out more about this man first. Using my accounting skills, I spent the next day tracing every financial lead I could find. I discovered that Vincent Coker owned several businesses, a nightclub, a car dealership, and a payday loan operation. All of them perfect for laundering money. I also found that one of Kofi's credit cards had been used repeatedly at Coker's nightclub, the Palace. Meanwhile, Zora made a breakthrough with Kofi's laptop. Mom, Dad had another email account, she announced, and he was definitely working with someone at the practice to skim money from insurance payments. The emails were between Kofi and a woman named Lila Kwame, the office manager who had worked at the practice for 2 years. In their exchanges, Lila outlined how they were altering billing codes to maximize insurance payments, then skimming the excess. She also mentioned keeping Vincent happy and paying off the debt. Lila is involved, I realized. She might know everything about what your father was doing. That night, while the girls were asleep, I received another call from Vincent Coker. Mrs. Okafor, I hope you're making progress on gathering my money. Mr. Coker, I said, my heart pounding but my voice steady. I know who you are now. I know you ran a gambling operation where my husband lost money. I know you may have been blackmailing him, and I know he was stealing to pay you back. There was a long pause. You've been busy, he finally said, his tone hardening. But knowing all that doesn't change what you owe me. My husband is dead, I said. Possibly murdered. I have 4 children to protect, including your friend Grace's baby. I can't pay you $200,000. That's unfortunate, Coker replied, because I can't afford to let people think debts to me disappear when someone dies. It's bad for business. So here's what's going to happen. You'll sell your house, cash out any investments, and pay me what Kofi owed. Or your children, all 4 of them, will learn how dangerous this world can be. Fury rose in me, displacing fear. Don't you threaten my children. 27 days, Mrs. Okafor. The clock is ticking. He hung up. I immediately called Detective Mensah and reported the threat. She promised to increase patrols near our house and suggested we consider staying somewhere else temporarily, but I refused to be driven from my home. The next day, I went to confront Lila Kwame at the practice, which had been temporarily closed following Kofi's death. I found her clearing out her desk. Going somewhere, Lila? I asked from the doorway. She jumped, nearly dropping the box she was packing. Mrs. Okafor, the practice is closed, so you thought you'd disappear before anyone connected you to the insurance fraud? I stepped into the office, closing the door behind me. I know everything, Lila. I know about the billing scheme, about Vincent Coker, about how you helped Kofi steal from his own practice. Her face paled. I don't know what you're talking about. Stop lying, I said, my patience gone. My husband is dead. I have a newborn baby dropped in my lap at his funeral. I have a dangerous man threatening my family for $200,000, and I have you trying to run away with whatever evidence is left. Lila seemed to deflate, sinking into her chair. You don't understand. Vincent is dangerous. He'll kill me if he thinks I talked. He's already threatening to hurt my children, I countered. So start talking. What was Kofi involved in? Over the next hour, Lila told me everything. Kofi had started gambling at Vincent's private club 3 years ago, right around the time he met Grace. At first, he won, but then he started losing. Big. He borrowed from Vincent to cover his losses, then borrowed more when he couldn't pay. The affair with Grace complicated things, especially when she became pregnant. Vincent, seeing Kofi's vulnerability, suggested the insurance scheme as a way for Kofi to pay him back. But it wasn't enough, Lila explained. Dr. Okafor kept gambling, thinking he could win enough to pay everything back and leave his life with you for Grace. But he just got deeper in debt. Then Vincent started blackmailing him with photos of him and Grace. Do you think Vincent had something to do with Kofi's death? I asked. Lila hesitated, then nodded. The week before he died, Dr. Okafor told Vincent he was going to the police. He said he'd confess to the insurance fraud and gambling if Vincent didn't leave him and his families alone. Families? Plural? I picked up on the word immediately. Lila looked uncomfortable. Dr. Okafor had set Grace up in an apartment. He was living between your house and hers. He called you both his families. The revelation that Kofi had been essentially living a double life, not just having an affair but maintaining a second home, hit me hard. But I pushed the pain aside to focus on the important information. So Kofi threatened to go to the police. What did Vincent do? He said something like accidents happen to people every day. It would be a shame if something happened to one of your families. I think he had Dr. Okafor killed to send a message to others who owe him. I felt sick. And now he's sending the same message to me. Mrs. Okafor, you should run, Lila said urgently. Take your children and go. Vincent won't stop. He can't afford to let people think they can escape what they owe him. I thanked Lila for the information and left her to finish packing. On the way home, I called Detective Mensah and told her everything I had learned. She promised to investigate Vincent Coker immediately, but warned me it might take time to build a case against someone so careful. Time is the one thing I don't have, I told her. He's given me 27 days to pay a debt I didn't incur. We'll find a way, she assured me. In the meantime, be extremely careful. When I returned home, I found a package on the front porch. No return address. Inside was a child's teddy bear with its head cut off. Attached was a note. Children break easily. 26 days left. Ice flooded my veins as I realized Vincent was escalating his threats. I called Detective Mensah again, who sent officers to collect the bear as evidence. She also assigned a patrol car to watch our house overnight. That night, I gathered my daughters and told them everything. We need to decide what to do, I concluded. Detective Mensah is investigating, but we may not be safe here. Where would we go? Zora asked, bouncing Tunde gently in her arms. And how would we live? All our money is tied up in the house and Dad's practice, which is now closed. She was right. We had limited options. My mother was elderly and lived in a small apartment. Kofi's family had made it clear after the funeral that they blamed me for the embarrassment of Grace showing up with Tunde. Our friends couldn't house 5 people indefinitely. We could sell the house, Amara suggested. Use the money to move somewhere new, start over. That's what Vincent wants, I pointed out. And we'd still be left with nothing after paying him. Then we fight, Nia said quietly. We all turned to look at my youngest daughter, usually the gentlest of the 3. Dad got us into this mess. He was weak and selfish, but we're not. We're Okafors. We don't run, and we don't give in to threats. Her words stirred something in me, a determination that had been building since the moment Grace handed me that baby at the funeral. My children were right. Running wasn't an option, and neither was giving in. We fight, I agreed. But we have to be smarter than Vincent, and we need evidence that will put him away for good. Over the next week, we developed our plan. Zora, using her computer skills, helped me document every piece of evidence we had about Kofi's gambling, the insurance fraud, and Vincent's threats. Amara contacted Grace, who agreed to give a statement about Kofi's relationship with Vincent, though she was terrified. Nia cared for Tunde and kept our home running while I worked with Detective Mensah to build a case. But Vincent was becoming impatient. The threatening texts came daily now, each more explicit than the last. Twice we spotted men watching our house, taking photos. Once, someone followed Zora from school until the police intervened. 20 days before Vincent's deadline, Detective Mensah called me with mixed news. We have enough to bring Vincent in for questioning about the threats, but not enough to hold him for Kofi's death or the gambling operation. We need more concrete evidence. Like what? I asked, frustrated by the slow pace of justice. Recordings of him making threats. Financial records showing Kofi's payments to him. Witnesses willing to testify about the gambling operation. I thought about it, an idea forming. What if we could get him to admit to everything? That would be ideal, but Vincent is too careful to just confess. Maybe, I said slowly. Unless he thought he was talking to someone who already knew everything. Someone he wanted to intimidate rather than hide from. Mrs. Okafor, Detective Mensah said cautiously. Whatever you're thinking, it's too dangerous. But my mind was made up. I need to confront Vincent directly, wearing a wire. The detective was strongly against it, but I insisted. He's already threatening my children. Every day we wait gives him more time to act on those threats. I need to do this. Finally, reluctantly, she agreed to set it up. 2 days later, I was sitting in a police van, being fitted with a hidden recording device. The plan was simple but risky. I would meet Vincent at his nightclub, ostensibly to discuss payment terms, and try to get him to admit to his crimes. Remember, Detective Mensah instructed, don't push too hard. If he suspects you're recording him, he could become dangerous. We'll have officers nearby, but it would take them time to reach you. I nodded, surprisingly calm. I understand. The nightclub was dimly lit and nearly empty when I arrived at the agreed-upon time. Vincent Coker sat at a corner booth, a glass of amber liquid in front of him. He was as imposing in person as in the photographs. Tall, broad-shouldered, expensively dressed with a smile that never reached his cold eyes. Mrs. Okafor, he greeted me, gesturing for me to sit. I'm surprised you wanted to meet. Do you have my money? No, I said plainly, sliding into the booth across from him. I came to negotiate, he laughed. There's nothing to negotiate. Your husband owed me $200,000. Now you do. My husband is dead, I said. Possibly murdered. Was that your doing, Mr. Coker? His eyes narrowed. Careful, Mrs. Okafor. Accusations like that could be dangerous. More dangerous than the threats you've been making against my children. Or the men you've had watching my house. Or the teddy bear with its head cut off. Vincent's smile thinned. You seem like a smart woman, unlike your foolish husband. So let me be clear. I always collect what I'm owed one way or another. Kofi learned that lesson too late. Don't make the same mistake. Is that what happened? I pressed, my heart racing beneath my calm exterior. Kofi threatened to go to the police about the gambling and the insurance fraud, so you had him killed? I didn't say that, Vincent replied smoothly. Accidents happen. Sometimes brakes fail. Sometimes people drive too fast on winding roads. So it was an accident, I said skeptically. Just like it would be an accident if something happened to one of my children? Vincent leaned forward, his voice dropping to a menacing whisper. "Let me tell you how this works. Your husband gambled at my establishment. He lost. He borrowed money from me to cover his losses and to set up his little girlfriend in an apartment. When he couldn't pay, I generously showed him how to acquire more money through his practice. He was greedy and kept gambling, falling deeper in debt. Then he got scared and made threats. Now he's dead, and his debt transfers to you. And if I don't pay?" I asked, hoping the recording device was capturing everything. "Then you'll wish all that happened was a teddy bear with its head cut off," he said coldly. "I know where your daughters go to school. I know which window is the baby's room. I know when you're alone in that big house. This isn't a negotiation, Mrs. Okafor. It's a courtesy call before things get truly unpleasant." I fought to keep my face impassive, though fear and rage battled within me. "You're admitting to threatening my family, to running an illegal gambling operation, to facilitating insurance fraud, and to being involved in my husband's death." Vincent smiled, confident in his power. "I'm not admitting to anything. I'm explaining reality to a widow who seems confused about her situation. Now, do you have anything productive to discuss, or should I start making arrangements for one of those accidents?" "Actually," I said, my hand moving to my blouse where the recording device was hidden, "I do have something to show you." Before I could reveal the wire, there was a commotion at the front of the club. One of Vincent's men came rushing over. "Boss, cops just pulled up outside. Lots of them." Vincent's eyes snapped to me, suddenly blazing with understanding and fury. "You stupid woman. You're wearing a wire." He lunged across the table, but I was already moving, sliding out of the booth and backing away. "It's over, Vincent. Everything you just said is being recorded." His hand went to his jacket, and I saw the outline of what could only be a gun. Fear shot through me as I realized how badly the plan had gone wrong. The police were supposed to wait for my signal before moving in. "You're dead," Vincent snarled, starting toward me. Just then, the doors burst open and officers flooded in, Detective Mensah at the lead. "Police! Hands where we can see them!" Vincent froze, then slowly raised his hands, his face a mask of hatred as he stared at me. "This isn't over," he said quietly as officers approached to handcuff him. "Yes, it is," I replied, feeling a weight lift from my shoulders as Detective Mensah read him his rights. Outside, safe in a police car, I finally allowed myself to tremble as the adrenaline drained from my system. Detective Mensah joined me a few minutes later. "We got him, Mrs. Okafor," she said, satisfaction evident in her voice. "The recording is clear. Combined with the evidence we already had, and the statements from Grace and Lila, it's enough to charge him with extortion, running an illegal gambling operation, and conspiracy in the insurance fraud. And we found a gun on him. He's a convicted felon, so that's another charge." "What about Kofi's death?" I asked, her expression sobered. "That's more complicated." Vincent was careful never to explicitly admit to murder, but we found one of his men who's willing to talk in exchange for leniency. It's not a sure thing, but we have a good chance of connecting him to your husband's death. I nodded, exhausted but relieved. "Thank you, Detective, for everything." "No, thank you," she said seriously. "What you did was incredibly brave and incredibly reckless. But it worked. Vincent Coker has been terrorizing people in this city for years. Thanks to you, that stops now." When I finally returned home, my daughters were waiting anxiously. "Mom!" they cried in unison, rushing to embrace me. "It's over," I told them, holding them close. "Vincent has been arrested. We're safe now." That night, as I sat in the nursery we had hastily set up for Tunde, rocking him gently, I reflected on everything that had happened since that fateful moment at the funeral. My husband had betrayed me in ways I never could have imagined. He had gambled away our security, stolen from his own practice, maintained a second family, and ultimately left us to face the consequences of his actions. Yet somehow, we had survived. More than survived, we had fought back and won. My daughters had shown a strength and resilience that filled me with pride, and this tiny boy in my arms, innocent of his father's sins, had become part of our family, despite the circumstances of his arrival. There were still challenges ahead. The practice remained closed, its reputation tainted by the insurance fraud. Our financial situation was precarious, with Kofi's legal debts still to be resolved. Grace had agreed to let Tunde stay with us for now, but we would need to determine a long-term arrangement that served his best interests. But for tonight, at least, we were safe. Vincent Coker was in jail. The immediate danger had passed, and I had discovered a strength in myself I never knew I possessed. As Tunda drifted to sleep in my arms, I made him a silent promise. The same promise I had made to my daughters years ago. I would protect him. I would provide for him. I would ensure he grew up knowing he was loved, not for who his father was, but for who he himself would become. The path ahead would not be easy, but we would walk it together. As a family, because that's what we had become. Not by choice, perhaps, but by necessity, and ultimately by love. 2 weeks after Vincent Coker's arrest, we received more news about Kofi's death. The mechanic who had worked on his car shortly before the accident came forward, admitting he had been paid by one of Vincent's men to tamper with the brakes. It wasn't a guaranteed fatal sabotage, but at the speeds Kofi typically drove on that winding road, it had proven deadly enough. With this testimony, prosecutors were able to charge Vincent with conspiracy to commit murder. His associate, the man who had paid the mechanic, turned state's evidence, hoping for a reduced sentence. Vincent himself maintained his innocence, but the evidence against him was mounting. I attended every court hearing, watching as the man who had threatened my family tried to maintain his composure as his empire crumbled around him. His nightclub was seized as evidence of racketeering. His other businesses were investigated for money laundering. Former associates, sensing his weakness, came forward with more information about his criminal activities. 6 months after Kofi's funeral, Vincent Coker was sentenced to 25 years in prison for his roles in the gambling operation, extortion, conspiracy to commit insurance fraud, and conspiracy to commit murder. As he was led from the courtroom in handcuffs, he glared at me one last time, but I felt no fear, only a sense of justice served. That same week, I received a letter from Grace. She had moved to another city to escape the memories and dangers associated with Kofi and Vincent. She thanked me for caring for Tunda and for helping bring Vincent to justice. She also relinquished all parental rights to her son, signing full custody over to me. He deserves a stable home, she wrote, with sisters who already love him, and a mother strong enough to protect him from anything. I'm not that person. My poor choices prove that. But you are. Please raise him as your own. And someday, when he's old enough, tell him I'm sorry for the chaos of his beginning, but grateful for the security of his future. The letter brought tears to my eyes. I hadn't expected Grace to give up her son completely, but I understood her reasoning. Tunda, now 8 months old and beginning to crawl, had become an integral part of our family. His sisters doted on him, and I had grown to love him as my own, despite the painful circumstances of his arrival in my life. With Vincent in prison and Grace gone, we began to rebuild. I sold Kofi's practice to another doctor, using the proceeds to pay off the legitimate debts he had left behind. Our house, which had once felt tainted by Kofi's deceptions, was gradually reclaimed as our own, as we created new memories within its walls. Amara decided not to return to university immediately, instead enrolling in a local college so she could remain close to home. Zora threw herself into her studies with renewed determination, talking about becoming a cybersecurity expert after seeing how technology had helped uncover the truth. Nia, my sensitive youngest daughter, started therapy to process her father's betrayal and death, gradually finding her way back to the confident young woman she had been. As for me, I returned to my accounting roots, starting a small firm specializing in helping medical practices with their finances. The irony wasn't lost on me, using my expertise to prevent the very kind of fraud my husband had committed. But it was satisfying work, and it provided for our family without requiring me to be away from Tunde for long periods. 1 year after that fateful funeral, we held a different kind of ceremony, Tunde's naming celebration, formally welcoming him as an Okafor. Friends and family gathered in our backyard, the same people who had supported us through the darkest days following Kofi's death and Vincent's threats, as I held my son, for that's truly what he had become, looked around at the faces of my daughters, of Vivian and Pastor Emmanuel and Detective Mensa, now a family friend, and I felt something I hadn't expected to feel again after learning of Kofi's betrayal. Peace. To Tunde Okafor, I said, raising a glass in toast. May you grow in strength, wisdom, and love, surrounded by a family that will always protect you. To Tunde, everyone echoed, glasses raised. Later, as the celebration wound down, Vivian found me sitting on the porch swing, watching my children laughing together on the lawn. You did it, Fatima, she said, sitting beside me. You protected your family, brought a dangerous man to justice, and built a new life from the ruins of the old one. We did it, I corrected her. I couldn't have managed without you, without everyone who stood by us. Still, Vivian insisted, most women wouldn't have had the courage to face down someone like Vincent Coker. Most wouldn't have taken in their husband's love child without hesitation. You're extraordinary, my friend. I shook my head, watching as Amara swung Tunde in the air, his delighted giggles carrying across the yard. I'm just a mother, I said, doing what mothers do, protecting her children, all of her children. Vivian squeezed my hand. Kofi never deserved you, you know. Perhaps not, I acknowledged. But his choices, however selfish and destructive, brought Tunde into our lives. And for that, at least, I can be grateful. As the sun began to set on our celebration, casting a golden glow over my family, I reflected on the journey we had traveled since that shocking moment at Kofi's funeral. The path had been fraught with danger, deception, and grief, but it had also revealed strengths I never knew I possessed, and bonds between my children that adversity had only strengthened. Kofi's legacy was complicated, a mixture of love and betrayal, of provision and theft, of life created and lives endangered. But my legacy, I determined, would be simpler. Love, truth, protection, integrity. These were the values I would instill in all my children, including the son who had come to me in the most unexpected way. When a woman handed me a baby at my husband's funeral and said, "He's yours now," she couldn't have known how truly those words would come to pass. Tunde was mine now, not as a burden of Kofi's betrayal, but as a beloved son, his future no longer shadowed by his father's mistakes or another man's threats. In the end, what had begun as a tragedy had transformed into something else entirely. A new beginning, a family redefined, a strength discovered, and for that unexpected gift, amid all the pain and loss, I would forever be grateful. The conviction of Vincent Coker brought a measure of justice for Kofi's death and the threats against my family, but our challenges were far from over. 2 years after that fateful funeral, we were still navigating the aftermath of my husband's deceptions. The insurance company that had been defrauded filed a civil suit against Kofi's estate, against me, essentially seeking to recover the stolen funds. My new accounting firm was successful but small, and the prospect of repaying over $180,000 in fraudulently obtained insurance payments was daunting. They have a strong case, my attorney, Mr. Bankole, explained during a meeting in my living room. The evidence of fraud is clear, and as Kofi's widow and the former practice manager, you could be held liable. But I didn't know about the fraud, I protested. I discovered it after his death. That helps your position, he acknowledged. But you were still the practice manager. There's an argument to be made that you should have detected the irregularities sooner. I felt a familiar knot of anxiety tighten in my stomach. Just when we were finding our footing, another consequence of Kofi's actions threatened our stability. What are our options? I asked, watching through the window as 3-year-old Tunde played soccer in the backyard with Nia, now 18 and preparing for university. We can fight it in court, arguing that you were also a victim of your husband's deception. We can try to negotiate a settlement, or, worst case, you could declare bankruptcy to protect your current assets. None of these options sounded appealing. Fighting meant legal fees we could ill afford. Negotiating still meant paying a substantial sum, and bankruptcy would devastate the business I had worked so hard to build. I need to think about it, I told Mr. Bankole. After he left, I sat on the back porch, watching my youngest and oldest children play together. Tunde's laughter, so similar to Kofi's, sent a pang through my heart. Despite everything, I couldn't bring myself to regret taking him in. He was my son now, in every way that mattered. Amara, now 23 and working at a local bank, found me there as twilight approached. "Tough meeting?" she asked, sitting beside me. I nodded, explaining the insurance company's lawsuit. She listened thoughtfully, then said, "You know, Mom, I've been thinking about Dad's old patients. Many of them still ask about you when they come to the bank. They respected you, not just him. They knew you were the one keeping that practice running smoothly." "What's your point?" I asked, curious where she was going with this. "What if we went public with the story? Not just Vincent's crimes, but Dad's fraud and how it's now threatening our family. What if we showed people how you've raised Dad's son as your own despite his betrayal, how you're still trying to do the right thing while the insurance company is trying to punish you for his crimes?" I hesitated. "I don't know, Amara. Airing our dirty laundry in public. It's not about gossip," she insisted. "It's about justice. Dad and Vincent did wrong, but they're gone. One dead, one in prison. Now this big insurance company wants to punish you instead. People understand fairness, Mom. They might support us." The idea was uncomfortable but intriguing. We had worked so hard to maintain dignity through the scandal of Kofi's death and the revelations that followed. But perhaps Amara was right. Perhaps transparency was our best defense now. The next day, I contacted a journalist I knew from church, explaining the situation and suggesting a story about the aftermath of medical insurance fraud and its impact on innocent families. She was immediately interested, seeing it as part of a larger narrative about corporate accountability versus individual responsibility. The resulting article ran in the Sunday paper, accompanied by a photograph of me with all 4 of my children on our front porch. The headline read, "After discovering husband's fraud and raising his love child, widow now faces financial ruin from insurance company lawsuit." The story detailed Kofi's crimes, Vincent's threats, and my fight to protect my family. It explained how I had cooperated with authorities, helped bring Vincent to justice, and taken Ntunda without hesitation. It contrasted these actions with the insurance company's lawsuit, which sought to hold me financially responsible for fraud I had neither committed nor benefited from. The public response was immediate and overwhelmingly supportive. People called the newspaper, wrote letters, and posted on social media, expressing outrage that the insurance company would target a widow raising 4 children, including her husband's baby from an affair. Local television stations picked up the story, requesting interviews. I appeared on a morning show with Tundi on my lap, calmly explaining how I had discovered Kofi's deception only after his death, and how I was determined to give all my children, including Tunde, a stable and loving home despite the challenges. "I don't deny that my husband did wrong," I said during one interview, "and I understand the insurance company's desire to recover their money, but they're pursuing it from the wrong person. I didn't commit fraud. I didn't betray my marriage vows. I didn't gamble away my family's security, yet I'm the one being punished, along with 4 innocent children who have already lost their father." The pressure on the insurance company mounted. Other clients threatened to take their business elsewhere if the company continued to pursue the case against me. Medical associations issued statements, supporting my position and criticizing the company for targeting a practice manager who had actually helped uncover the fraud. 3 weeks after the first article appeared, the insurance company's lawyers contacted Mr. Bankole with a settlement offer. They would drop the lawsuit entirely if I agreed to serve as a consultant on their new fraud prevention program, sharing my experience to help them detect similar schemes in the future. "No financial payment?" I asked, skeptical. "None," Mr. Bankole confirmed. "They're more concerned about the public relations damage at this point. Your story resonated with people, Fatima. The company is being cast as a bully going after a vulnerable widow. They want to transform that narrative by showing they're working with you to prevent future fraud, not punishing you for your husband's crimes." It was a victory beyond what I had hoped for. Not only would we avoid financial ruin, but I would have the opportunity to help prevent other doctors from following Kofi's path. I accepted the offer immediately. The public campaign had another unexpected benefit. A local university's business school invited me to guest lecture about ethics and healthcare finance. This led to a part-time teaching position that complemented my accounting firm perfectly. I found I had a talent for teaching, for translating my experiences into lessons that could help the next generation of healthcare administrators avoid the pitfalls that had ensnared my husband. 3 years after Kofi's funeral, Our lives had found a new rhythm. Amara was engaged to a kind young engineer who treated Tunde like a little brother. Zora was completing her degree in computer science, often bringing her knowledge back to help my growing firm implement better security practices. Nia had blossomed at university, studying psychology with plans to work with children affected by trauma. And Tunde, now 4, was thriving in preschool, a bright, affectionate boy who bore his father's features, but, I hoped, would develop a very different character. One evening, as I prepared dinner with Zora's help, she asked unexpectedly, "Do you ever wonder what Dad would think of our lives now?" The question caught me off guard. We rarely spoke of Kofi anymore, except when necessary to explain things to Tunde. "I don't know," I answered honestly. "I think he'd be proud of you girls. You've all become remarkable young women despite everything." "And proud of you," Zora added. "You held us together when everything was falling apart. You protected us from Vincent. You gave Tunde a home without hesitation. You built a new career. You even turned the insurance lawsuit into an opportunity to help others." I smiled, touched by her words. I did what any mother would do. "No," she insisted. "Most people wouldn't have had your courage or your forgiveness. You know what I realized recently? When that woman handed Tunde to you at the funeral and said, 'He's yours now,' it wasn't just about the baby. It was about all of it. Dad's mistakes, his debts, his secrets. All of it became yours to handle. And you did, Mom. You handled it all." Her insight struck me deeply. She was right. I had inherited not just Kofi's son, but all the consequences of his poor choices. And somehow, with the help of my daughters, my friends, and my faith, I had transformed those consequences into something meaningful. Later that night, after everyone had gone to bed, I sat in Tunde's room watching him sleep. His face in repose looked so much like Kofi's that it sometimes took my breath away. But unlike Kofi, this child would grow up understanding the importance of honesty, integrity, and responsibility. He would know what it meant to be truly loved and truly loving in return. "He's yours now," Grace had said at the funeral, thrusting her baby into my arms. She couldn't have known how prophetic those words would be. Not just for Tunde, but for the entire situation Kofi had left behind. It had become mine to resolve, mine to transform, mine to redeem. And in doing so, I had discovered strengths I never knew I possessed. I had rebuilt a life for myself and my children from the ruins of betrayal. I had found justice not just through Vincent's conviction, but through reclaiming our future from the chaos of Kofi's deceptions. 5 years after that fateful funeral, I stood in the backyard of our new home, a larger house we had been able to purchase thanks to the success of my accounting firm and teaching career. Friends and family had gathered to celebrate my 50th birthday. Tunde, now 6 and starting 1st grade, darted among the guests with the energy only a child can maintain. My 3 daughters, all accomplished young women now, had organized the entire celebration as a surprise. As twilight fell, Amara clinked a glass to get everyone's attention. "We want to make a toast," she announced, with Zora and Nia joining her at the front of the gathering. "To our mother, Fatima Okafor. 5 years ago, our world was shattered when a stranger handed Mom a baby at our father's funeral. Most women would have crumbled under such a betrayal, under the financial problems and dangers that followed. But not our Mom," Zora continued. "Instead, she fought for justice. She protected us from a dangerous man. She built a new career. And most importantly, she showed us that a family isn't defined by blood or by the absence of challenges, but by love and resilience in the face of those challenges." Nia added, "She gave our little brother a home and a future, not because she had to, but because that's who she is, a woman of incredible strength, compassion, and integrity." Then Tunde stepped forward, clearly coached by his sisters but speaking earnestly. "To my mom, who loves me even though she didn't have to. You're the best mom in the whole world." Tears filled my eyes as everyone raised their glasses. Looking around at the life we had built from the ashes of betrayal, I felt a deep sense of peace and accomplishment. The path had not been easy, but we had walked it together and emerged stronger for the journey. Later, as the party wound down, Detective Mensah, now Police Chief Mensah and a dear friend, sat beside me on the porch swing. "Do you ever think about how it all started?" she asked. "That moment at the funeral?" I nodded, watching Tunde play with Amara's fiancé nearby. "Every day. It was the worst moment of my life, and strangely, the beginning of something beautiful. Life is like that sometimes, she observed. The greatest challenges can lead to the greatest growth. You're not the same woman you were 5 years ago, Fatima. No, I agreed. I'm stronger, wiser, maybe a little less trusting but more discerning, and definitely more grateful for what matters most. As if on cue, Tunde ran over and climbed into my lap, wrapping his small arms around my neck. "Love you, Mom," he whispered. "Love you too, my son," I replied, holding him close. In that moment, the words from the funeral echoed in my mind once more. He's yours now. What had begun as a shocking burden had become my greatest blessing. Tunde was mine, not by birth but by choice, by love, by the daily decision to embrace him as my son, despite the painful circumstances of his arrival in my life, and in choosing to love him. I had ultimately chosen to reclaim my own life from the shadow of Kofi's betrayal. I had chosen forgiveness over bitterness, courage over fear, action over victimhood. I had chosen to define my own story rather than letting it be defined by my husband's mistakes. The journey wasn't over. There would always be new challenges to face, new growth to achieve. Tunde would one day need to understand more about his origins, about the father he would never know, and the mother who had given him up. My daughters would continue navigating their own complex feelings about their father's legacy, and I would continue balancing the memories of my marriage, both good and bad, with the reality of the life I had built after its devastating end. But we would face all of it together, as the family we had become, not by blood alone, but by choice, by love, by shared experience. A family forged in crisis and strengthened by resilience. A family that had found justice not just through legal means, but through reclaiming our right to happiness despite the betrayals of the past. As Tunde drifted to sleep in my arms, tired from the day's excitement, I made a silent promise to him and to all my children. The past may have shaped us, but it would not define us. We would continue writing our own story, one day at a time, with love as its foundation and hope as its guiding star. And in that promise, I found the truest justice of all. Hello, everyone. I hope you enjoyed my incredible story. If you did, please don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel for more real-life experiences and stories of overcoming adversity. Your support means the world to me and helps me share more stories that might inspire others facing similar challenges. Have you ever had to deal with a betrayal or unexpected life change? How did you handle it? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Also, let me know where you're watching from. I'm always curious about my audience from around the world. Remember, sometimes life's biggest challenges can become our greatest opportunities for growth and transformation. Thank you for joining me on this journey, and I'll see you in the next story. With love and gratitude, Fatima.